Pastor Jason Talsness here at Messiah Lutheran Church on Skidaway Island in Savannah, Georgia. And the purpose of this video is to talk about the results of the survey that we conducted pertaining to matters concerning getting together for worship physically at some point in the future. So why was there a survey? At the April meeting, the council decided that even though we didn't know when we might be getting together physically to worship, that some people should prepare for that question about what worship would look like. So a task force was appointed. I'm going to try not to use last names here, but the task force is mostly from the council, so we have good overlap between the council and the task force. Concerning property matters, because this relates to property, Tim A. Concerning music and worship, our own staff member, Diane B., who plays organ. We have, in terms of a person who's a medical professional, Connie is a medical professional, so she's on that team. Jill is on the team because of her role in parish life and whether or not we have a coffee hour and what that would look like. So Jill's been a part of that team. And chaired by the very capable Mrs. Terry B., someone who can get things done and lead us through this conversation. So the task force was assembled, and we talked about different possibilities and what this might look like without a timeline in mind. Their job was simply to say, if and when we open up, what does that look like and what do we do? Their job wasn't to put together a date or anything like that. Their job was to inform the council, this is what worship would look like. Now, in our discussions, as you'll see, we reached places where we really couldn't go any further until we heard from you, the congregation. And so last week, in the Messiah Minute, a survey was sent out, and you were asked to respond. And so I want to say thank you, because some people do surveys and nobody fills them out, and then we don't know anymore. But as of now, we got over 70 responses to the survey, and I want to say thank you for just taking that time to answer those 10 questions. What I'm going to do today, not high tech, but it's reliable. We have a flip chart here, and we're going to go through how you all responded to the questions we asked. So with each question, I'll briefly state the question, why we asked it, and then what the results are and what we might be able to understand from what you told us. So, number one, planning to be in Savannah this summer was the question. We do lose a percentage of our worshiping population who go north. We are a seasonal congregation, and so we want to know that before you started telling us what you're going to do and then tell us you're going to go up north. We want to know how many people were going and staying. So 89.7% said they're staying here this summer, planning to be in Savannah, and 10% said they were not going to be in Savannah, which is about what I thought it was. I tell people we lose between 10 and 15% of our congregation in the summer months. Worship attendance is generally 20% less because people travel who stay here year long, but pretty much the majority of the people, or the people who are usually here in the summers, will be here this summer. That's number one. But here's number two. Would you be willing to wear a mask during the service? So this is interesting because we're taking the congregation's temperature. Some people are against masks. Some people are for masks. What do you think, Messiah? Would you be okay coming to church wearing a mask? And I was pleased with these numbers. 92.5% said yes, we would. 7.5% said no. So the vast majority of you, overwhelming majority of you, are fine wearing masks to worship. And way to go on that, because I think that's for your protection and for everybody else's protection based on what we know about the virus. Number three, when will you feel comfortable returning to physical worship in the sanctuary? Now, if all of you said Christmas time, then our task force would be done and we wouldn't have to do anything, because that you would be telling us we don't feel safe. But the responses were different than that. When 29.2 said, I'm ready to come back right now. All right? So that's about a third of the congregation says, for whatever reasons, I would like to worship together again. 36.9 or 37% said when the curve flattens, you would like to come back to worship. So there, if the curve flattened, then we'd have, a good 67% of the church who would be ready to worship with us. 15.5% of you said you'll return to worship in the sanctuary in the fall. Just want some time, not ready to do it this summer at all. That's that's a healthy size number, and we took that number to heart. That a lot of you, regardless of the details, just want to stay at home and be safe, and you're to be commended for that. Finally, when there's a vaccine, that's 18.5%, 19% said that. And that too is a high number because based on everything we know, although we have some encouraging results this week, a vaccine's at least a year away. That's what they're telling us. So could it be that many will say we're not coming back for a year? There's a chance of that. Now, this next question, are you wanting communion? As a pastor, we haven't had communion since March 15th as a congregation. And I wasn't sure, how are we doing with that? Some people, communion is vital to their faith life. They're used to taking communion often. Others of you remember the days growing up where communion was once a month or even once a quarter. So because of the demographics of our congregation and because Messiah is not do weekly communion, I was interested to see that, are you wanting communion with nothing about masks or gloves or sterile technique or any questions around that? 54% of you said yes, and 46.2% of you said no. I will tell you that the word is a means of grace, that when we hear Christ's words of love and forgiveness, that's the same thing as communion, and so we're doing okay for now to keep on doing it. I will confess to you, I picture maybe giving people communion outside if there's a way we could do that safely, where people could sign up, and we'd have different 15-minute shifts by household. I'm interested in looking into that. When I saw these results, it took the urgency away. So let me know if you have any thoughts about that communion question. I welcome that. But basically that said, okay, we're doing okay. No need to respond immediately with that. Question number 5, what time works best for you? This question came from yours truly because we worship at 9 a.m. That's earlier than most of the churches on the island. People will tell me, love your church, but the worship time is too early. People will tell you that. And so I just thought this would be an occasion. We know that Americans are staying up later, that the rhythms of life change. And I just wanted to see, if we did have worship in the morning, what time would work best? No one said 8 a.m., and no one said 8:30 a.m. 53% of you said 9 a.m., which is the time we do. So half of you were happy. That's by far the majority. But then the 9:30 time slot, 14%, I'm rounding off here, and then 22% or 23% of you said 10 a.m. So there is a little bit of a shift toward an openness to being later. It wasn't a clear message to start worship later during the COVID, but something we're taking into account as we look at it. Number 6, how crucial is singing during worship? You need to know that most guidelines from insurance companies and from denominations are discouraging congregational singing during worship. I wanted to know, this question came from me, number 1, how do you feel about that? And then number 2, this question was kind of a tip-off to the rest of you that we're looking at that, because there may not be singing during worship. So, strongly disagree, 13.4. Well, let me just put it this way. On the question of singing, 46% of you were neutral. And then a good 32% really like singing, and some did, and a much smaller percentage didn't think it's crucial to worship at all. So, so we're going to be okay on that question on singing. And if and when we get together, we may be asked to wear masks. I'm told it's difficult to sing with a mask, but this question helped me understand where you were with this issue. Another item the church task force about reopening discussed was worshiping outside. Worshiping outside would eliminate the variable of aerosol contamination. However, there's a host of other issues in terms of sand gnats and heat and all that. So we just want to know, what did the church think about doing worship outside? 33 1/3 were neutral. And then a good 52% were agreed that it would be something leadership should look into. 10% said, no, if we come to worship, we would prefer to worship indoors. So the outdoor question, you all are open to it. There are some factors that make that a challenge, but it was helpful for us to know that there were a lot of you that were either at the very least neutral, if not open, to the question of worshiping outside. All right, live stream or record. Now, for those of you who don't know, live stream means it's kind of like you're watching the service live on television, but through YouTube. So whatever's happening up front, you're seeing in your home in real time. So that's what live stream is. And in a way, you could live stream, and you could, in theory, join all the people who are here, and you could see who's at church here, or you could see who's tuning in, perhaps. That's what live stream is. Recording a service is just, I come in here with Ken and Diane, and we do the service and have some special music, and then you can access it anytime you want. The thing about live stream is once the recording's over, then you can watch it as it's recorded later that day. So in a way, live stream is a recorded service. The question is how important is it that we're all watching together? For all of you, you said watching together isn't terribly crucial. 19.4 said they liked live stream, but most of you, 80%, like the way we're doing it, which is broadcasting them on YouTube in recording. Number 9, the bulletin. We make a bulletin each week still. I'm wondering, do people sing along during the worship service at home? I'm told some do, some don't. Do you print the bulletin? Some do, most don't. Well, what do you think about the bulletin? Because we don't have to do it if it's not being used. And 44% said the bulletin's helpful. Okay, that's great. 7.8% of you said it's not helpful. That's helpful to know and good to know. You used during the virtual service 28%. So a solid chunk of the congregation, 30%, are people who worship with their bulletin at home. And then don't use during the service, 31.3%. So there's a little fuzziness in these numbers, because if you don't use it during the service but still find it helpful, I think that's that. But I don't want to get too deep into those weeds. But just generally, we decided we're going to keep doing the bulletin because you're using it and you're reading it, and it is a communication tool. So I guess that's all for the questions. I want to thank you for tuning in. We are going to take this information to heart. We're already making plans, but as of today, we do not have a day when we're physically going to worship together again. Well, how do we figure that out? Okay, there are a number of conversation partners that we have, because we're not doing this in isolation. First of all, is the question of what the government says. And the government says that people over 65 aren't to go out until the second week in June. So that's one conversation partner that we take into account, is what are the civil authorities saying? The next conversation partner is our denomination, that we're part of a network of Lutheran churches. They have resources, they have recommendations. So we are in conversation with them, and I'm in conversation with the bishop about when we might be worshiping and what he's concerned about. Finally, then, the other conversation partner is you, the church. If everyone else is going back to worship but you're not ready, we don't have to do it. Conversely, if you're really chomping at the bit to get together, we need to have a conversation about why that is and how we proceed. The final conversation partner, informally, has to do with the other churches on the island. And I just want to let you know that on a weekly or bi-weekly basis, I'm consulting with the other pastors, saying, where are you with this question? What do you think? What does June look like to you? And so we are talking to one another as we are all faced with this same kind of dilemma. This is our first pandemic, folks, and we're working our way through it. I want to thank you for the support of Messiah Lutheran Church through your gifts and your time and your commitment. I want to thank you for your patience, because we've all had to adjust during these times. And for today, we will say goodbye, be safe, be faithful, and there'll be further videos in the weeks to come. Thank you.